My family skipped my graduation ceremony for my cousin's dog's birthday party. They didn't even tell me directly. I saw it in the group chat. I still sent them the live stream link. Minutes later, the dean called my name. This year's valedictorian, now a Harvard scholarship recipient. The room clapped. My phone stayed silent. No messages. No response. Just total silence from the people who were supposed to be proud of me. My name is Lena Thomas, and I've always been the quiet one in my family. Not the loud cousin who cracks jokes, not the aunt who dominates every conversation, and definitely not the center of attention. I was the one who brought a book to barbecues, sat at the edge of birthday parties, and helped clean up while the rest of them danced in the living room. Growing up, I didn't mind being quiet. I liked listening more than speaking. I liked getting things done. I liked being the one people could depend on, even if they didn't always say thank you. School was where I felt most like myself. It was the only place where effort truly mattered. I knew that if I studied hard, kept my head down, and stayed focused, I could build a life outside of the noise, outside of the expectations that came with being a middle child in a loud, distracted family. While my relatives posted Instagram stories about backyard brunches and matching family t-shirts, I was in the library mapping out scholarship applications, prepping for exams, and tutoring other students after class. Not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted something more for myself, something different. I didn't grow up in a house full of praise. My mom, Janet, was practical and sharp. The kind of woman who reminded me to be realistic when I talked about dreams that didn't come with a guaranteed paycheck. My dad, Ronnie, was quiet and agreeable. He never argued, never challenged, never stood up for much of anything. If my mom said no, he nodded along. If my older brother forgot my birthday or my younger sister rolled her eyes when I talked about school, my parents brushed it off like I was being sensitive. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was just how things were. And I learned early on not to expect too much from anyone. Still, I kept hoping. I hoped that if I worked hard enough, they'd see me. If I made honor roll, they'd come to the ceremony. If I won the speech contest, they'd sit in the front row. If I graduated at the top of my class, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at my cousin's baby announcements or my sister's dance recitals. But each time, something came up. My mom had errands. My dad had work. They always meant to be there, they said. They just had other priorities. So when graduation day came, I told myself not to expect much. I had already accepted the invitation, picked up my cap and gown, and made plans with my best friend Sarah, who had been my biggest supporter since sophomore year. I didn't tell my parents I was valedictorian until the week before the ceremony. I thought maybe that would be enough to change things. I imagined their reaction: shock, pride, maybe even a real smile. Instead, my mom just nodded and said, "Good, I'm glad your hard work paid off." That was it. No, we're so proud of you. No, we wouldn't miss it for the world. Then, the night before graduation, the family group chat lit up. My cousin Olivia sent a cheerful reminder. Doggy birthday bash tomorrow at 2 p.m. Bring treats, balloons, and your party hats. Everyone replied with excited emojis and gifs. My mom responded with, "We'll be there." My dad liked the message. My brother sent, "Don't forget the tennis ball, cake, LOL." No one said a word about my graduation. I stared at the screen, waiting for someone, anyone to remember. I even texted directly, "Reminder, my graduation is tomorrow at 2. Ceremony's being live streamed." No one replied, not even a thumbs up. I sat on the edge of my bed, phone in my hand, heart pounding. I had prepared for this moment for 4 years. I had stayed up late working on my speech, rewritten it 6 times, and practiced in front of my mirror until the words felt like part of me. And yet somehow, a dog's birthday had taken priority. Sarah called me around 10 p.m. "What time do you want me to pick you up tomorrow?" "I don't know," I said quietly. "Everyone's going to Olivia's dog party." She didn't even pause. "Then it's their loss. You're not walking that stage alone. I'll be there. Front row." I nodded, holding back tears. "Thanks." That night, I laid out my gown and honors sash on the edge of my desk chair. I packed my speech into my folder, set 2 alarms, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was just tired. Tired of working so hard for people who only saw me when it was convenient. But I still sent them the link, because deep down, even after everything, a small part of me still wanted them to be proud. The morning of graduation, I woke up before my alarm. The sunlight had barely broken through the curtains, but I was already wide awake, staring at the ceiling. I had that strange mix of nerves and emptiness you get before a big event when something's missing, and you don't want to admit it out loud. I got dressed slowly, carefully, like the way you prepare for something sacred. I pressed my gown, adjusted my honor cords, and checked my hair 3 times in the mirror. On the outside, I looked like someone ready for her moment. On the inside, I felt like a question nobody had bothered to answer. I checked the family group chat again. Still nothing. No reply to the link I'd sent. No good luck. No we'll be watching. Not even a lazy emoji. Just the messages from last night. All about Olivia's dog and the birthday setup. Someone had posted a photo of a little crown they bought for the dog to wear. The thread was full of hearts and laughing faces. I put my phone down, face down on the desk, and left it there. Sarah arrived at 11:30, just like she said she would. She brought coffee and a bagel, even though I couldn't eat. She hugged me tight and said, "You ready to make them regret not showing up?" I smiled, but it was a small, tired one. She saw right through it. We drove in silence most of the way. She played soft music, gave me space, didn't try to fill the air with empty words. That's why I loved her. She knew how to show up without trying to fix things. She knew some things couldn't be fixed. At the university, the campus buzzed with families everywhere. Parents holding bouquets, siblings with balloons, grandparents in wheelchairs with cameras around their necks, people taking photos by the fountain, hugging under trees, writing chalk messages on the sidewalk. It was loud and beautiful and joyful. I felt invisible walking through it all. I kept looking, out of habit. I scanned every crowd for a familiar face, even though I already knew the answer. My parents weren't there. My brother wasn't there. My sister wasn't there. No one from my family even sent a message. We reached the auditorium and checked in. I was handed a program with my name listed at the top of the student honors section. Valedictorian, it said in bold print. It should have felt surreal. It should have made me proud. Instead, it felt like paper. Backstage, the energy was electric. Students were laughing, hugging, adjusting their caps. I heard someone behind me say, "My mom's already crying and we haven't even walked out yet." I turned slightly, just enough to see a row of parents with cameras and tissues, standing at the front row like they had camped out overnight. I swallowed hard and kept facing forward. The ceremony started. The music began. We lined up and stepped out one by one. I didn't feel the stage under my feet. I didn't feel anything at all. When they called my name for the award, I heard applause. I smiled and waved. Sarah stood up and cheered loud enough for 3 people, but behind her there were empty seats where my family could have been. Then came the moment. The dean walked to the podium, opened a folder, and said, "Before we close today's ceremony, we have one more announcement." Everyone quieted. She cleared her throat and said, "This year's valedictorian is not only graduating with the highest GPA in her class, but she has also been awarded a full academic scholarship to Harvard University." My name followed. For a second, I didn't react. My ears were ringing. People gasped. Some cheered. I heard someone in the crowd say, "Wow," like they were genuinely stunned. Flashbulbs went off. Applause thundered. I stepped forward slowly, numb. The dean smiled and handed me the letter, and I took it with both hands like it might float away if I didn't hold it tight enough. And just like that, I had everything I had worked for, everything I thought I wanted. The recognition, the future, the room full of people finally seeing me. But when I walked off the stage, I glanced down at my phone. Still nothing. The live stream had been viewed, but no replies, no reactions, not a single message from my family. Their silence hit harder than their absence. It said, "Even now, you're not enough to interrupt the party." When I got home that night, my cap was crook, my feet were sore, and my phone was still silent. No missed calls, no unread messages. Just a stream link that had been opened by 3 people and never acknowledged again. I changed out of my gown slowly, folding it neatly over the back of my chair. My diploma and the Harvard letter sat side by side on my desk, untouched. Any other day, I would have stared at them in disbelief. But that night, they looked like things I had earned in a dream, things that belonged to someone else. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would. I thought the hurt would come out loud and messy, but instead, it just sat in my chest like a stone. I made myself a bowl of cereal. I sat on the floor with it and stared at nothing for a long time. My phone buzzed once. It was Sarah. "You okay?" I typed out, "I'm fine," but deleted it. I didn't want to lie and I didn't want to vent. Instead, I wrote, "They didn't say anything. Not a word." She replied right away, "Then let that be the last time their silence gets to decide your worth." That hit me hard. I sat with her words, read them again, then again, because it was the truth. I had spent so long trying to be enough for people who didn't notice unless it was convenient. I had shaped every win in my life hoping they would one day look up and say, "We're proud of you." And they didn't. But the rest of the world had. My professors saw me. My classmates cheered for me. Harvard had chosen me. And Sarah had shown up loud and proud even when my own family didn't bother. I realized something important that night. I was waiting for permission to be proud of myself, waiting for someone else to stamp my success with approval. But all that waiting was keeping me stuck. I didn't need their applause to feel worthy. I needed to accept that their silence said more about them than it ever did about me. So I made a decision. I printed a photo from the ceremony, the moment the dean called my name and handed me the scholarship letter. I put it in a frame and placed it on my nightstand, not to prove anything to them, but to remind myself that I did it, no matter who was watching. I also decided I wouldn't chase their validation anymore. I wasn't going to pretend to be okay with being second to a dog party. I wasn't going to respond to shallow texts that danced around the subject. I wasn't going to keep asking for space in a family that never reserved any for me. The next morning, I got a text from my mom. "Hope the ceremony went well. Olivia posted the dog pics. So cute." No mention of the live stream, no mention of the scholarship, not even a congrats. I stared at the message for a minute. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new email tab and started writing to the Harvard admissions contact I had been assigned. I asked about housing options, the orientation schedule, and funding details. I made a checklist of what I'd need to do before moving. That became my focus. I ordered business cards with my name and Harvard Scholar Class of 2027 printed on them. I started writing my thank you notes to the professors who had written my recommendations. I even scheduled a campus tour to get familiar with the environment before classes began. I threw myself into preparation, not to distract myself, but to build forward, to build a future that no one else could minimize or overlook. A week later, my aunt sent a message in the group chat. "So proud of our Harvard girl, just heard from Sarah, wow." The flood of responses followed. "Wait, what? Harvard? Why didn't anyone tell us? We would have come to the ceremony." And there it was, the moment they suddenly cared. But it didn't move me. Their attention came too late. Not because they were busy, but because they never thought it mattered until someone else said it out loud. That was the turning point, the day I stopped hoping for them to catch up, because I was already gone, mentally, emotionally, and soon, physically. I had earned something they would never be able to give me. Not Harvard, not recognition, but self-respect. And once you find that, you don't go back. It was the following Sunday when the group chat finally lit up with the kind of energy I used to wish for. My Aunt Tasha was the first to post. She'd run into Sarah at the grocery store, and Sarah, never one to play it quiet, told her about the graduation, told her about the valedictorian speech, told her about the full ride to Harvard. And just like that, my name became worth saying. Aunt Tasha's message read, "Heard Arlena crushed graduation and got into Harvard? How did no one know this?" That was all it took. Suddenly, the same people who had ignored the ceremony were typing all at once. "Wait, what? Why didn't anyone say anything? We missed the speech. Lena, Harvard, that's incredible." I watched the screen fill up like a storm rolling in after a long drought. The same relatives who didn't bother to send a good luck were now trying to stake a claim in my story. It was surreal. watching them scramble to pretend like they hadn't completely missed the moment. Then my mom chimed in. "You never told us you were valedictorian. We would have come." That was the one that made me stop scrolling. I read it again, then a third time. It was like she had rewritten the past in one line, as if I hadn't texted them, as if I hadn't reminded them twice, as if I hadn't dropped the live stream link with more hope than I ever wanted to admit. I felt my stomach twist, not from sadness, but from something colder, disbelief. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I opened the folder where I kept the clip of my speech. It had been recorded professionally, and the university had sent it to all graduating seniors. I watched it again, not for them, but for me, to remind myself of what I had actually done, what they had actually missed. There I was, standing at the podium, delivering my speech to a packed auditorium, my voice clear, my hands steady. The words weren't angry or bitter. They were honest. I had talked about hard work, about doing things without applause, about believing in your path even when no one else does. People had cried. People I barely knew had come up to me afterward and told me they felt seen through my words. But the people who should have been there weren't. And now, suddenly, I was supposed to accept their surprise as if nothing had happened. Sarah called that afternoon. "So, are you going to say anything?" I sighed. "I don't know what to say that wouldn't be fake." She didn't push me. "Then don't fake it. Just tell the truth." So I typed. "I did tell you. I reminded everyone." I sent the link. "I worked 4 years for that moment, and no one showed up. Not because you didn't know, but because it didn't matter to you. I don't need you to pretend it matters now." And I hit send. I knew it might spark tension. I knew some of them would think I was being dramatic, but I didn't care. It was the first time I had ever said it directly. No more shrinking. No more smiling through the silence. For a few minutes, no one replied. Then my brother sent a thumbs up. My dad texted me privately. "I'm sorry we missed it. I'm proud of you, even if I didn't say it when it counted." It was something. Not enough, but honest. My mom didn't respond at all. Not then. Not for the rest of the day. But that silence? It didn't sting this time. Because for the first time, I wasn't standing on a stage hoping they'd clap. I wasn't sitting in my room praying for a message that would never come. I wasn't shrinking to make space for people who never showed up. I had spoken my truth. I had claimed my voice. And that moment, quiet as it was, meant more to me than their sudden, delayed applause ever could. The climax wasn't Harvard. It wasn't the scholarship, and it wasn't even the speech. It was this, realizing I didn't need to prove anything anymore. The most powerful thing I did wasn't getting into a top school or winning awards. It was letting go of the people who only showed up when it was convenient. And in doing that, I finally showed up for myself. It's been months since graduation, but I remember that day like it's stitched into the inside of my skin. Not just the moment I walked across the stage or when the dean said Harvard, but the silence that followed. The silence that told me more about my place in my family than words ever had. After I sent that message to the family group chat, I stopped checking it. I didn't want to keep reopening the wound. I knew what would happen anyway. People would be quiet for a while, pretend nothing happened, then go back to talking about baby showers and barbecue recipes like my name had never been typed. And honestly, that's exactly what they did. No one apologized. Not really. No one said, "We should have been there." My mom never acknowledged what I wrote. My dad's quiet message was the only one that felt even remotely real. And even that didn't change the facts. But I didn't feel small anymore. That was the biggest difference. I spent that summer preparing for a new chapter. I packed slowly, intentionally, sorting through clothes and notebooks, holding on to things that mattered and letting go of what didn't. I donated the dress I'd bought in high school, hoping my mom would compliment it. I threw away the birthday card from my aunt that misspelled my name, but never forgot her dog's middle name. I stopped saving space for people who didn't care if I showed up. Instead, I surrounded myself with what I had built, my hard-earned scholarship letter, my acceptance email from Harvard, a framed photo of Sarah and me outside the ceremony, her arms flung around my neck, both of us laughing. She helped me move into my graduate housing in Cambridge. We carried boxes up narrow stairs, unpacked books onto shelves, and laughed at how much coffee I'd brought. Before she left, she stood in the doorway and said, "You've always been enough. They just couldn't see it." That line stuck with me because she was right. It wasn't about who clapped or who posted or who missed the stream. It was about knowing for the first time that I didn't need their vision to believe in my own value. At Harvard, I met people who saw my mind before anything else. Professors who asked about my ideas and actually listened. Classmates who talked about books and politics and dreams without trying to one-up anyone. I walked into every room like I belonged. Not because someone told me I did, but because I finally believed it myself. I still think about my family, not with anger, just with clarity. I understand now that some people don't show up, not because you're not worthy, but because they're not capable. They're stuck in their own limited ways of seeing the world. Some people will clap louder for a dog's birthday than your greatest achievement. That doesn't mean your achievement is less. It just means their priorities are small. And that's not my burden to carry anymore. I don't know what they tell people now. Maybe they brag when they think no one will call them out. Maybe they say, "Arlena's at Harvard," and act like they helped me get there. But I also know it doesn't matter, because everything I built without their applause. I built it in the quiet, in the long nights, in the lonely mornings, in the tears I never let fall in front of them. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the version of me who didn't give up when it would have been easier to just settle. I'm proud of the girl who sat in an auditorium full of cheering strangers while her family threw a party for a dog. I'm proud of the woman who said no more, who stopped shrinking and started speaking. The biggest lesson I've learned is this: sometimes the people you expect the most from will give you the least. But that's not the end of your story. You write the next chapter. You decide what kind of life you build from the silence. And if no one claps, clap for yourself. Because your value is not measured by their recognition. It's measured by your persistence, your growth, and your belief in your own voice. And that voice, once you find it, will never let you down.